Okay, I don't know if we lost connection there briefly, and I'm sorry about that, folks. But this is what happens, at times. So we have to just, I appreciate everyone's patience on this. Um, let's just confirm that we're going out there. In a moment, we should be able to continue. Just making sure, whenever we have anything live, these things are bound to happen. And okay, it sounds like we're back on in line, and you can see the interface on the bottom that I'm using here is actually the OBS setup. So we're gonna go ahead and try to get rid of that, so we can just go ahead and focus on what matters, which is Bash scripting. I want to thank everybody that's been able to hang on to up to this point, and again, I want to apologize again. But this is the miracle of technology. It's also the curse of technology as well. So I'll just continue talking. I already gave you a brief introduction, but if you're just walking in, my name is Ralph Figueroa. I'm a member of the Jacksonville Linux user group. I've been with the user group for since 2008, around that time frame. I've been using Linux going on to 14 years now. It's my main operating system, and some of the things I was talking about was how I use Linux as my main operating system, and as well as still use some Windows and Mac, but my main operating system is Linux. Now, of course, we had a little technical difficulty. Actually, from this laptop, this is the first time I've ever um, used this particular setup for streaming, and it's an older Pavilion DV6, but it is loaded with about 12 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm using a relatively small footprint for this particular Linux distribution. And I'm going to put a correction in right now before we continue. I had stated that I'm using a Fedora 32, and actually I'm at Fedora 31 right now. I'm supposed to be upgrading. I like to hold off on doing some of these upgrades, as that there's sometimes, especially with some of the older hardware, there could be some kinks. So you want to make sure that you don't have any issues with that. Well, we were talking about using Bash, and this is exactly what you should be seeing right now. You should be seeing a Bash environment. I was also talking about the preliminary of why we would, go ahead and construct a Bash script, and how we would go about doing that. Well, it's basically using the same commands that we use every day for Linux administration. Now, if you're just starting Linux and you're learning the command line, perhaps what's happening is, well, you're just getting started. You're trying to understand all the vernacular. You're trying to you feel a little intimidated by the command line. Well, don't. Uh, Pretty much all the operating systems, Windows, Macintosh, and Linux, have a command line that gives you ultimate control. And you have different sets of commands. And these common daily activities that we have can be used to create our first script, which is what we're going to try to do today. So one of the first things I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and show you, of course, we're talking about ls, which is listing directories. And you see all these little directories here and all these different headers. Now what I want to do is I want to go to a specific directory. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get to my bash tutorial. Do all autocomplete here. And we'll clear this up. Now, with ls, as we know, we are listing directories. If we wanted to find out where we were in the directory, we would do pwd. And what is pwd? Let's use man. Let's find out what that is. The exact definition. It prints the full file name of the current working directory. Now these are the two, I mean, I use these all the time when I have to go ahead and navigate. And many of us who are starting out and using Linux will, once we get a handle of it, will be using ls and pwd, especially if we're manipulating files, copying and moving them. Now, funny thing, there is one particular command. It's known as one of the shortest commands in the Linux language, and it's called W. Now, if you happen to have, for example, more than one user on you've gotten to the point where you're working with maybe multiple users on your server setup, you want to go ahead and try to see who's there, and of course who's currently working and how long they've been there. Well, this is what W does. In fact, if you look at the actual definition of W here, you'll find it displays the information about the users currently on their machine and their processes. So what we were discussing earlier, before the stream ended so quickly, is that when we are executing these commands, we're basically touching upon files. And these files that we have their own program, and that's what ls is, that's what pwd is. Now, you could, of course, do something like this all the time, and you can keep typing pwd, you can keep typing ls, you can do that, and you'll have to do it like every single time, or we could create a script. Now, when it comes to creating a script, you need a couple of things. Of course, you already are in the environment. You want to make sure you have a good text editor. The one that we're going to be using today is going to be Vim. It's my personal preference. I know some people use Nano, and of course I respect them for that. And I think it's a great text editor. We're not here to get into text editor wars. I used to use that myself, but I've gotten very used to Vim. And so with Vim, we're going to go ahead and create our first script. So let's try to create. How can we go ahead and create a script where we could combine all three of these commands together and run them all at the same time, so we could display the pertinent information? Well, let's just go ahead and we'll create a script now. We'll call it our script 1. Now, when you're going to go ahead and create this script for bash, what you want to make sure is that of course you are using the extension .sh. Okay, I'm using our script 1 because it's us together trying to go ahead and create our first bash script. So let's go ahead and open that up. I'm going to go ahead and hit insert. So let's see what happens if we go ahead and type, for example, just see what ends up happening when we do something like this. Now, we close it. Now, every script has to be become an executable. So we'll use chmod, which is the command to go ahead and allow for creation for this executable. We'll have it a +X, which stands for executable. We'll go ahead and we'll say our script 1.sh. And let's see what happens. Alright, looks like so far so good. Now let's try to run it. So we have our first script. Now it's not very elegant. In fact, in some cases, you would want to clean it up. Maybe add something else. I mean, because there's a lot of garbage here. Well, in one of the books that I have read here in my learning how to program in Bash, specifically the O'Reilly book for Bash programming, which is actually a great book by Cameron Newham and Bill Rosenblatt, called Learning the Bash Shell. And you could get that used very cheaply. But the one thing you want to keep doing is keep these scripts working by going ahead and adding to the script, working with the script. So I want to clean that up. I don't like the fact that, here it is, it's presenting itself and it's showing me all these different files, but the screen had a lot of other text. So let's go back and see if we can modify that. We'll go back to our script here. And at the same time, while we're going back and looking at it, we could take a look at how Bash, how this was executed when we created the script. It ended up happening that we just had these three commands put together. Now you probably want to make sure that when you're writing this, you want to set the environment. And in setting the environment, it's very important to go ahead and indicate that you want to put it into the Bash environment. So this was lucky because we had it running and it was in the same terminal. Well, we're going to learn about what a shebang is right now. Just bear with me as I try to set this up again. I'm still with you all. Hold on one moment, please. And it almost seems like we're sort of at the user group meeting, just trying to set things up. So one of the things you want to do when working with a script here, for example, I didn't like, first of all, how it was, all the text was on the screen. So we're going to add an extra command. But right before we do that, what we're going to need to do is we need to really establish where this is going to be put into. So we're going to create, we're going to go ahead and put in, first of all, that this is supposed to be in Bash, in the Bash environment. We'll start with by going ahead here and adding this, they call shebang, putting it into the pathway of bin bash. Now, like I said, I didn't like how it was. So can we go ahead and see if we can clear up the screen? We could do that. But let's first of all see how this works. We'll reinitialize just in case. This is just by habit that I really do this. And now let's try to do an execution. Alright, everything still seems to be working. So now, what happens if we were to put the clear command here? Now what does clear do? First of all, clear will clear out the screen. Now let's try to add clear and see if it will do it in steps or if something else will happen. Now we're going to go ahead and reinitialize again out of habit. So when you don't put in the, if you don't follow the syntax, what ends up happening is you end up getting with a command not found, and that's because it was too close together. It was supposed to be spaced out. All right. So we'll try again. Okay, and let's see what happens. Now look at that. So the thing is, these are 3 commands that we use every day. This is something that you could have done, anyone could have done, and it's very simply done. It shows that the dynamic of bash scripting should not be intimidating. You should be able to create your first bash script regardless of how you may not know about all the different things like variables and also about any type of if you have to go ahead and pull out a pointer on memory. You don't need to know all that in the beginning. That will come. That will come, and that's the most important thing that you want to go ahead and do. So our first bash script was extremely simple. It was an extremely simple script, and it allowed us to go ahead and pull all 3 commands together. Now there's some scripting elements that you want to be aware of. Like for example, probably be better. Maybe we should do, like for example, use a more elegant solution to going ahead and programming this way. Maybe use semicolons. Let's see what happens when we use the semicolon, for example. The purpose is to really be able to execute the program step by step, but to keep it clean also. Now, let's try again and run it. Okay. So, it's running fine, and it looks nicer too. I mean, really, you want to make it, you want to get into that habit of adding a semicolon, because what ends up happening is, when you do that, it makes things neater. But in bash scripting, you don't necessarily have to do that. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to do that. That's why we were able to go ahead and create this very basic script. The point of this particular exercise and this presentation was really to, get into the mindset that you can do. The first step in creating any program is just going ahead and doing it. You should not go ahead and basically be intimidated to such an extent that you never do it. You won't break your machine unless you use certain commands that you don't want to really touch, like let's say you use DD or something where you actually can delete files. No, don't do that. Really, a lot of the scripts that you want to work with you can find online. And in fact, when you start learning, first learning and working with Bash, I highly encourage first using the different resources that are available to you, which include, for example, the internet. Now, these are some examples of Bash scripts that may actually be extremely useful. I decided to use these basic commands when just to show the example of Bash scripting and how you can also start automating certain activities so that all you have to do is execute that particular script. But here you'll find on the internet, for example, if you look at this particular link here, like makeuseof.com, you'll find some good ideas here for the beginner. Talks about the different shells that are available to you, give you a history. You also have, this one was a good one that I found, just giving you good examples of the Linux shell scripts that you could create. Now, I want to break down one particular a script here, just to show it. But as we're looking through these websites, you'll find that there are a lot of interesting terms that are here. And what you need to know is that you'll learn it, but you need to go ahead and do the legwork and actually go on the internet and ask the question via Google, for example, because Google will help you. Or you can also join various groups. Now, of course, I'm a member of the Linux user group, but you can be too. There's local groups in your city. We're in Jacksonville, Florida. Right now we're operating virtually, and what we try to do is go ahead and have educational and we share videos here on YouTube on a monthly basis, especially due to the pandemic here. But it's a great time to also be able to reach out to everyone in the world and share Linux and what we do in regards to working with these operating systems. I would highly recommend, now I can't pull it up right now, but I'll just go ahead and type it here so you can see it. One particular book that really has been very helpful, and it's Nemeth, Snyder, and Hein and Whaley's Unix and Linux System Administration Handbook. And I'm just going to type it in so you can see it. But basically, this is a great investment. If you get it new, it might be a little high on price, but it's worth it. I actually have an older edition, which is the 4th edition. You don't necessarily have to get it new. In other words, you can go ahead and work with a used version. So I'm just going to give you a viewing of that book here. And of course, it'll get cleared up here. So this is the book, but you can see there's various prices. And I would highly recommend that you obtain this book, because this will be the Bible that you can use from starting to get from those baby steps into much more wider steps. And of course, I want to recommend using this particular book too, Learning the Bash Shell from O'Reilly. These are two books that will be extremely helpful for you. I didn't want to get too deep into the into too many ideas, and what I'd like to do in the future is I probably will go ahead and do a follow-up on this particular presentation. But I want to just close with just this one thing. the most important thing you can do in regards to trying to do experimenting with Bash is literally learn the commands from the manual online that is contained within your Linux. Use these books as your resources and go on the internet, and you'll find out that after some time working through this, you can actually program and create Bash scripts as well as anyone else. So it's not that much of a challenge. So wouldn't it be nice, for example, if we can go ahead and just call upon systems processes, and then maybe have it running when you first start out. That's a cron script, for example. CRON is what it stands for, and in fact, that's another way that you can automate your different processes, and that we can save for another time, when we could talk about how to do step-by-step automation, basic automation for the beginning. So if I could leave just a piece of advice, first of all, don't forget to look into these books. And here's the homework. Go ahead and start looking at your command line. Start going through man cron. And the next time, maybe we will go ahead and talk about the cron command and trying to go ahead and create more complex programs. So I hope that you all like this particular video. Sorry that it's a little haphazard. Hoping, as this was the first stream, that there'll be more smoother and many streams to come. Please be safe. I want to thank you for taking the time for sharing your time with me today, and take care.